Alright, y'all, Mark here, cooking books, burning info. So a couple of buddies called me, asked me what I need to do a video just discussing what I think about the current climate that we find ourselves in. Well, if y'all been watching my videos, y'all know I'm not just gonna give y'all a lay term answer. I'm gonna put some thought into it, right? I'm gonna put some science, I'm gonna put some math, I'm gonna put some intellectualism in it, right? Here's the bottom line. In algebra, for instance, there's something called a function, right? A function of y, function of x, something called a function. It's a mathematical expression, pretty much. But the function says that there's a rule. There's an input, and there has to be a specific exact output, and it has to the output has to be in correlation to the input. In other words, the input is called a variable, and the output is usually a constant, right? And what that means is that whatever you put in imagine a function as a machine. Let's say the function is a machine, right? Whatever you put into that function, the function does something to it. There's a process that happens to the variable that you put in, which is the input, and then you get a specific output. Now that output is a derivative of the input, and the output is going to be determined by what's happening with the input. So the input is critical. The input is where you want to keep your eyes focused, not so much on the output, because the output is only the outcome, and the outcome is not something that can be controlled. The outcome is not something that can be controlled. It cannot be predicted, and it cannot be regulated. It's what they would call, again, staying within math, it's what they would call stochasticity, right? Which means an unpredictable, random event, right? It's random on this, it's unpredictable, and it's a probability. So you can't predict the outcome. I think y'all see where I'm going with this. The input is the predicate for the outcome, and the outcome cannot be regulated. It cannot be controlled. Again, sticking within the lines of math, you have something called rational numbers, right? Rational numbers follows a set pattern. The denominator has to be greater than 0. It's written in fraction form. If it's not in fraction form, if it's in decimal form, it's called an irrational number. Irrational numbers do not follow patterns. They're endless numbers that their sequence is sporadic. They do not have a pattern, hence the term irrational. And I'm using mathematics to explain this because mathematics is the language of the universe. It's it's the language of all of us. If you think about it, we're all equations. That's why we all say we have problems. And in school, you're taught to solve math problems, right? So we're mathematical equations that's complex. Human beings are complex algebra. We're complex algorithms. We're complex equations that needs to be solved. And I say I'm using mathematics to explain what's going on today because here's the reality, folks. According to the laws of mathematics, right, what I just explained to you, the input is going to spur a specific outcome. That outcome cannot be controlled. So what we see going on in the society today is the outcome of the input, okay? The input that was placed into the function, which is the culture, is that of atrocity, of vile wickedness. Again, it's just egregious, right? We all witnessed it. No need to go over it. We know what we saw, and that was a sheer brutality, right? On steroids, right? So I think based off the input, which is what we all witnessed, the output, which is the consequence, which we're now witnessing, it's consistent with mathematics. I'm sorry. It's consistent with the algos, which is the algorithms, the formulas. It's consistent with the mathematical expressions. Again, you have rational, irrational numbers. You have domains, you have ranges, and these are mathematical formulas. If you study them, you'll understand that everything we see playing out in our universe follows mathematical sequences, and we can't predict them. This and it's called stochasticity of the stochastic model, right? So I know, here's the thing, a lot of us, we're comfortable, we have real nice lives, and we don't want anything to disturb that, right? We want the motto and the goal of mankind is to live as peaceable as possible, have a life, and try to have as much peace as possible in your life, because the world is filled with chaos, right? Because, you study these philosophies, chaotic theory, chaos theory, right? So the world is, chaos is built into the universe. It's just as part of the world as part of the universe is oxygen and the other three elements of life. So most of us want to keep that peace because we have nice lives in this country and we want to maintain that. So I get that. But I also have to speak to you guys from a scientific standpoint, because I'm a scientific mind. Like, I study science and I understand the metaphysics and the physics and how things, energy, and how it operates. Outside of legislation, outside of what you think, in my opinion, it's universal laws, right? And we have to acknowledge that. And the universal laws are greater than our comfort, our conveniences, and our, what we have constructed for our structures that we have structured for ourselves. So everything that's happening, the looting, everything that's going, the rioting, it's the universe flushing itself out. It has to happen that way. I'm sorry. It's needed. It's the yin and the yang. It's the balance, right? It's how, look, put it like this. A lot of folks who are against all the protesting and the rioting and the looting, here's the reality of things. When the colonies were being colonialized by the mother country at that time, the European powers at that time, the monarchs, protesting wasn't going to get them their freedom. Let's be honest. Marching wasn't going to let the king lift his sword off the colony's neck. Let's just be honest, right? There was quotes by Patrick Henry: "Give me liberty." What is it? "Give me liberty or give me death," or some shit like that. I forgot the quote, but we know the quote: "Give me liberty or give me death." Taxation without no representation, right? They took up arms and look. The point I'm making is, you can't say the formula worked when it's in your favor to get your freedom and rebel against your oppressors, and then that same formula when the roles are reversed, the tables are turned, and you become the oppressor, and you have modern day minorities who represents the colonies in this analogy. You can't say, okay, you can't use the same formula we use, right, to rid ourselves of the tyranny of the king, of the monarchs. You can't say that formula worked for us, but now you can't use that formula against us, because we're the ones in power now, and we're the ones with the sword on your necks, right? We're ruling you with an iron fist. So that formula, we don't want you to use that against us. I know we used it to get our freedoms and to cast off tyranny and oppression, but you can't use it now. Obviously, that's a double standard at the highest level. And we know the world is not based off fairness, or else this video wouldn't even be necessary. So the reality is, my thing is, I would definitely be, me personally, I believe cooler heads prevail. But then again, I'm also aware that I'm an intellect, right? Like, I study a lot. I'm scholastic, right? I do a lot of research. I'm more of a person that'll sit down around the table and talk with you. And I believe my words are very powerful, very persuasive. I know I could allow the energy. I can change the energy of the climate, of the room, the temperature. I can do that. Notice I keep saying I can do that, because I'm also cognizant that my brain is a little bit more, let's just say the neocortex of my brain is a little bit more in the front, the driver's seat. Whereas my fellow man, the amygdala, is in the driver's seat. And if you study the amygdala, that's a primitive brain. That's the fight or flight. There's no reason, there's no ration. That's the pick up my gun and come kill you. That's the pick up my sword and come chop your heads off. That's the I'm gonna burn your shit down part of the brain. It's a primitive part of the brain. I have to be conscious that if someone else has not taken the time to exercise the neocortex, that they're going to be more in a primitive state of mind, because that's just how organisms are designed, right? All of us are designed like that. You come out the womb, your neocortex ain't developed. It's purely the limbic brain, right? Your instincts. So there's a lot of people who are still just moving instinctively.
I can't bash them, because at the end of the day, I might be the guy to come and sit in the room and talk with you, but I want them around. I'm gonna still want my hood dudes who ready to go to war. I'm gonna still want them around, because I understand that here's the reality. Here's the reality, because I'm not naivete. The only way I'm gonna keep you from stealing my house and my property is you have to know that I have a gun over here just as big as yours. That's the only thing that's it's called checks and balances. Check it out. It's in the Constitution. Every civilization needs checks and balances. So all those who are out there who are going to do the crazy stuff, I'm not going to do it, because I'll be the one to sit down and talk with you. Like I said, I believe I can get stuff done with my words. My mind is my weapon. I'm more inclined and advanced that way. But I can't speak for my fellow man who's like, nah, my fists and my is my weapons. And I get that. I get that. So my take on it is that obviously I would call for people to, let's not burn our own houses down. Like, it's just, at the same time, I understand it doesn't make sense. Like, if I'm mad at you, I'm not going to burn down my own house, because now I got nowhere to live. You know what I'm saying? So that just makes no sense. At the same token, I understand it's going to happen, because the universe is going to, so chastity is built in. It's going to purge itself. It's going to balance itself. It's going, I tell people all the time, I was talking to a buddy of mine. I said, listen, when a tsunami comes, it doesn't select which, houses or villages or cars or, businesses or to tear down. The tsunami is going to destroy everything in its path. A tornado doesn't say, I'm gonna pick this house up and leave that one. I'm gonna toss this car and leave that. It tosses everything in its path. When earthquakes quake, they're not selecting what, grounds to shake up and what ground. If there's a tectonic shift in that geographical location, that location is getting riveted. So I say all that to say, we human beings, we're forces of nature, no different than the tsunami, the tornado, the earthquake. We all have one thing in common, and that is we're all driven by the same forces: electrons, protons, neutrons, and quarks and bosons and Higgs bosons, and so these are all particles that makes up every. Lightning is this. I have the same electricity synode in my body that makes lightning and thunder and all that stuff. So we human beings are just forces of nature, no different than the tsunami and the storm. So a storm is just going to sweep everything in its path, and we can't do nothing about that. You got to accept that. We have to. We have to accept when a tsunami comes. We just have to accept that. That doesn't mean we lay down and let people come destroy everything. I'm just trying to show you that for me to sit here and bash a certain group of people who are expressing themselves certain ways, I'm like, I would tell them not to do it. But I wouldn't condemn them, because I understand that that's how the forces of nature is going to work, and the universe will always seek to restore itself to order. An ocean will have a storm, and the waters will come cascading up on the land, and once that storm settles, the ocean is going to recoil back to its original state and its original borders. So that tells me that everything has to play its course. It has to work itself out. It's the universe way of seeking stabilization or seeking justice for the injustices. Till next time, peace. Just my take, my opinion. Peace.